In the ancient city of Syracuse, under the Mediterranean sun, a man once whispered to the universe, and the universe whispered back. He was not a king, not a warrior, but a thinker. A mind so powerful, it could hold the weight of the earth, with a lever. His name was Archimedes. A mathematician, physicist, engineer, and inventor. Archimedes bridged pure theory with real-world application. He calculated the value of pi. He unlocked the secrets of buoyancy. He created machines that defied belief and ideas that would shape the course of science for millennia. He defended his city not with swords, but with science. And yet, even at the height of war, he knelt in the dust, still drawing circles. This is the story of a man who saw deeper, thought further, and lived for the pursuit of truth. This is the story of Archimedes. Chapter 1: Childhood and the Birth of a Thinker. The story of Archimedes begins in 287 BCE, in the bustling Greek city-state of Syracuse, a cultural and scientific jewel on the eastern coast of Sicily. At the time, Syracuse was not merely a strategic port. It was a beacon of Hellenistic civilization, a place where trade routes crossed, and where philosophy, astronomy, and mathematics were alive in the public square. Archimedes was born into this world of curiosity and complexity. His father, Phidias, was an astronomer, a man devoted to the patterns of the stars and the logic of the heavens. Though little is known of Phidias, his profession suggests that young Archimedes was raised in an environment where rational observation was prized, where questions were not dismissed but welcomed, where the cosmos was not feared but studied. Even as a boy, Archimedes displayed a deep fascination with patterns, not just in the sky, but in everything around him. The curves of a shell, the balance of a seesaw, the ripples on water. He was said to ponder endlessly, to draw shapes in the dust, to lose himself in thought, often oblivious to the noise and rhythm of daily life. It was clear, this was no ordinary child. Archimedes' early education likely followed the classical Greek model: arithmetic, geometry, music, literature, and physical training. But unlike others, he was not content with learning what had been taught. He questioned how it was known and why it worked. At some point in his youth, he left Syracuse for Alexandria, home to the greatest library and research center of the ancient world. There he would encounter the ideas of Euclid, whose elements laid the foundations for geometry. He would engage with teachers and peers, many of whom were direct intellectual descendants of the early Greek mathematicians. In Alexandria, knowledge was not only revered, it was organized, systematized, and debated. Archimedes absorbed it all, not just the formulas, but the thinking behind them. It was there that his ideas began to crystallize. There he learned to balance pure theory with empirical observation, to question the impossible and attempt to prove it. And when he returned to Syracuse, he did not return as a student. He returned as a mind awakened, a man prepared to look at the world differently. From this point forward, he would begin laying the mathematical groundwork that would last more than 2,000 years. He had the mind of a philosopher, the hands of an engineer, and the heart of a seeker. The thinker had been born, and the world would never be the same. Chapter 2: The Language of Mathematics. To Archimedes, mathematics was not merely a tool, it was a language, the most precise and powerful language known to man. He did not use it to measure crops, trade goods, or build houses. He used it to reveal truth, to describe the structure of reality itself. In a world still dominated by myth and superstition, Archimedes saw lines, curves, angles, and meaning hidden in the form of logic. His earliest works focused on geometry, the foundation of Greek mathematics. But unlike his predecessors who viewed geometry as static, Archimedes gave it motion. He imagined shapes in transformation, solids rotating, curves sliced infinitely, volumes built from infinitesimal parts. This revolutionary perspective allowed him to do what no one before him had done: calculate areas and volumes of irregular objects. He developed what is now known as the method of exhaustion, a technique in which a shape is subdivided into an infinite number of smaller shapes, approximating the total with increasing precision. It was, in essence, a form of integral calculus, invented 2,000 years before the term existed. In his work on the quadrature of the parabola, Archimedes calculated the area under a parabola. He demonstrated that it was exactly 4/3 the area of a certain inscribed triangle. This wasn't guesswork. It was proof, layered logic, rigorous to the core. He approached mathematics not just as a calculation, but as a conversation with nature. And nowhere is this more evident than in his attempts to define p, the ratio between the circumference of a circle and its diameter. Archimedes drew polygons inside and outside a circle, increasing their sides from 6 to 96 and calculating their perimeters to approximate p. With astonishing accuracy, he proved that p lies between 317 and 3.1071, or approximately between 3.12408 and 3.1429. This estimate stood as the most accurate for over 1,000 years. But even more than numbers, Archimedes was fascinated by form, by how nature folded upon itself, by how spirals grew, and how balance emerged from symmetry. In On Spirals, he explored the properties of curves generated by rotating a point around a fixed center while moving along a radius. This work prefigured what would later become polar coordinates. In On Floating Bodies, he moved beyond the dry world of diagrams into the mystery of nature itself, describing the principle of buoyancy that now bears his name. What distinguished Archimedes was not just his ability to compute, but his ability to reason. His writings show not only results, but process, assumptions, logic, and the steps by which one may proceed. He wrote for the curious mind, not for the casual reader. His words were dense, his theorems challenging, but his commitment to truth was unwavering. To read Archimedes is to step into a mind that demanded understanding, not acceptance. He refused to leave a conclusion unproven. He challenged what was known. He opened the door to a new kind of thinking. Centuries later, René Descartes, Isaac Newton, and Carl Friedrich Gauss would stand on the same ground Archimedes once measured, and they would marvel. Because in a world of scrolls and sand, of rudimentary tools and uncertain philosophy, this man had glimpsed the infinite. He had spoken the language of mathematics with the fluency of one who had invented it. Archimedes didn't just solve problems, he created methods. He didn't just describe the world, he defined how we think about it. And in doing so, he laid the groundwork for every equation yet to come. Chapter 3: The Archimedean Screw and Applied Engineering. Archimedes is often celebrated for his theoretical brilliance, his geometry, his calculations, his abstractions. But to view him solely through the lens of pure mathematics would be to ignore one of the most astonishing dimensions of his genius: his gift for applied engineering. Archimedes was not a thinker who lived only in scrolls. He was a builder, an inventor, a master of transforming principle into practice. His inventions were not magic, they were mathematics, made physical. One of his most famous contributions to practical science was a device so elegant, so enduring, that it is still used today: the Archimedean screw. The concept was deceptively simple: a spiral encased within a hollow tube. When rotated, water trapped between the threads was lifted upward along the spiral path. It is believed he developed it while in Egypt, perhaps to assist in irrigation and drainage in the Nile Delta. It required no pressurized pump, no power source beyond muscle, and yet it moved water with astonishing efficiency. Today, variations of the Archimedean screw can be found in agricultural irrigation, industrial wastewater systems, and even hydroelectric turbines, a 2,000-year legacy of applied thought. But this was only the beginning. Archimedes delved into the principles of mechanical advantage. He analyzed how small forces could move large weights, how motion, guided by proportion, could overcome mass. His most famous declaration in this realm is legendary: "Give me a place to stand, and I will move the earth." It was not poetry, it was physics. Archimedes formulated the law of the lever, a quantitative expression of how force and distance interact on a fulcrum. He demonstrated, through both diagrams and prototypes, how a man could lift a ship from the harbor using a system of pulleys. This was not showmanship. It was science applied to the service of civilization. His compound pulley systems allowed workers to lift massive stones, build defensive walls, and move weights that would otherwise require hundreds of men. This was the beginning of systematic engineering, not trial and error, but design based on principle. What made Archimedes unique was not merely his capacity to invent, but his insistence on understanding why a machine worked. He did not stumble upon solutions. He derived them from axioms, from balance, from geometry. His machines were, in essence, physical proofs. Every gear turned with purpose. Every force obeyed a calculated rule. This fusion of abstract and applied thinking made Archimedes not only a mathematician or an engineer, but the first true physicist. He was laying the groundwork for the entire discipline of mechanics. Centuries later, Galileo Galilei would cite Archimedes as his primary influence. Isaac Newton, too, built upon the mechanical laws first hinted at by this ancient Greek mind. To understand levers, pulleys, screws, and gears is to walk the path that Archimedes first cleared. And yet his approach was always elegant, never excessive. For him, the most efficient machine was the one that obeyed the logic of nature. In a world still dominated by myth and mysticism, Archimedes revealed a deeper truth: that understanding the laws of motion was more powerful than commanding armies. And that with just the right balance, a single man could shift the world. Chapter 4, Defending Syracuse, Science in the Face of War. For most of his life, Archimedes lived for knowledge, for numbers, balance, and the quiet truths of geometry. But late in his life, those truths were called upon in a very different way. Not to explore, but to defend. In 214 BCE, during the Second Punic War, the Roman Republic turned its attention to the strategic city of Syracuse. Syracuse had initially aligned with Rome, but political shifts brought it into an alliance with Carthage, Rome's bitter rival. The betrayal was intolerable. Rome responded with force. Led by the seasoned general Marcus Claudius Marcellus, the Roman army and navy launched a full-scale siege of the city. And so, the mathematician was summoned. The man of thought became a man of action. Archimedes was nearly 70 years old. He had no military title, no command over troops. But what he had was intellect. And intellect, when applied with precision, can be the most devastating weapon of all. Using his deep understanding of mechanics, Archimedes designed and constructed an array of extraordinary defensive machines. Catapults calibrated to strike with unprecedented accuracy, ballistae that could launch massive stones across staggering distances, and machines of terrifying ingenuity, devices that, to the Romans, seemed like the work of gods. Among the most legendary were the so-called claws of Archimedes. These were mechanical arms mounted on the city walls, capable of reaching down, seizing Roman ships, lifting them from the water, and smashing them against the rocks. To the invaders, it was nightmare made real. They had come to fight soldiers, but instead found themselves under siege from logic and geometry. One of the most enduring stories, though often debated by modern scholars, is that Archimedes used arrays of polished bronze mirrors to concentrate sunlight and set Roman sails ablaze. The legend is powerful, beams of pure sunlight reflecting off the walls of Syracuse, igniting enemy ships before they even reached shore. Whether literal or symbolic, this tale captures the essence of Archimedes' genius. He turned nature itself into a weapon. For nearly 2 years, the Romans battered the city. They launched assaults, tightened their blockade, and poured resources into siege engines. Yet time and again, their efforts were repelled by inventions they could neither match nor comprehend. Even Marcellus, the Roman general, came to admire his invisible opponent. According to ancient sources, he spoke often of Archimedes with awe, and issued strict orders that if the city fell, the mathematician was not to be harmed. It was not an empty gesture. It was respect. Respect for a mind so brilliant that even war itself bent to it. But for all Archimedes' inventions, for all his defensive brilliance, Syracuse could not hold forever. By 212 BCE, Roman persistence paid off. Through treachery or exhaustion, a gate was opened. The Romans entered the city. The siege was over. The city had fallen. But the legend of Archimedes had just begun. Even as Roman boots thundered through the streets, even as the city was looted and burned, Archimedes did not run. He did not hide. He remained in his home, and he drew. He was found by a soldier, washed in the lines of a diagram sketched in sand. He looked up and reportedly said, "Do not disturb my circles." It was the last thing he ever said. Despite orders from Marcellus, the soldier killed him, perhaps not knowing who he was, perhaps not caring. And so, the greatest mind of the ancient world was silenced, not by argument, not by failure, but by the sword. A brutal end to a life devoted to understanding. Chapter 5: The Legacy of Pure Mathematics. If Archimedes had left behind only his inventions, his name would still be remembered. But it is in the quiet precision of mathematics, in abstract thought, in eternal logic, that his greatest legacy resides. Long before Newton or Leibniz, long before the language of calculus was born, Archimedes laid the foundation. He explored the concept of limits, the summation of infinite series, and the measurement of curves and volumes, using what we now recognize as integral reasoning. In his treatise on the quadrature of the parabola, he calculated the area bounded by a parabola and a straight line by slicing the figure into an infinite number of triangles. He added their areas in a geometric progression, a method uncannily close to modern techniques of integration. In On the Sphere and Cylinder, he demonstrated that the volume of a sphere is 2/3 the volume of the cylinder that contains it. He proved this not by formula, but by method, with pure geometric reasoning. Archimedes himself considered this his greatest achievement. He was so proud of the result that he requested a carving of a sphere within a cylinder to be etched upon his tomb. This was not just mathematics, it was philosophy through form. A union of thought and space. A demonstration that the world, at its core, could be understood through reason. He also gave us one of the earliest recorded approximations of pi. Using a technique that involved inscribing and circumscribing regular polygons around a circle, he narrowed its value to between 3.17 and 31071. That is, between 3.1308 and 3.1429. An astonishing accuracy for the time. He used a 96 gon, not because it was simple, but because he understood that mathematical truth requires patience, discipline, and clarity. It was this dogged pursuit of truth that separated Archimedes from even his greatest contemporaries. Where others accepted what appeared true, he demanded proof. Where others described, he demonstrated. In his lesser-known work, The Sand Reckoner, Archimedes took on a bold task: to estimate the number of grains of sand that could fill the universe. To do so, he devised a system for expressing extremely large numbers, far beyond the Greek numeral system of the time. He constructed a place value system akin to modern scientific notation. And in doing so, he hinted at a mathematical universe that had no upper bounds. A cosmos governed not by divine mystery, but by magnitudes, scales, and laws that could be known. The Sand Reckoner is more than a calculation. It is a manifesto of human intellect. A declaration that even the infinite is not beyond the grasp of reason. Among his most visionary writings was one that the world lost for centuries, a work simply titled The Method. In it, Archimedes described how he used mechanical intuition, weighing, balancing, imagining cuts through solids, to arrive at mathematical truths before proving them formally. He compared this process to discovering gold hidden beneath the earth, then bringing it to light with formal demonstration. The manuscript was lost during the Middle Ages, but in the year 1906, it was rediscovered in a most unexpected form, as a palimpsest. A 13th century Christian prayer book written over scraped parchment. Underneath the prayers was Archimedes. Modern imaging techniques revealed hidden lines, and with them, a glimpse into the original genius of mathematical physics. Archimedes had, in essence, invented mathematical modeling, 2 millennia ahead of his time. These writings prove that Archimedes was not only a brilliant geometer, he was a philosopher of form, a theoretical physicist before physics existed, and a pioneer in the logic of the infinite. His ideas did not vanish with Rome. They resurfaced in the Islamic Golden Age, were studied by Arab mathematicians and translated into Latin during the Renaissance. They inspired thinkers like Galileo, who called Archimedes his greatest teacher, and Newton, who built upon the mechanics Archimedes first imagined. Through every curve we calculate, every pressure we measure, every orbit we predict, Archimedes is present. Not in form, but in principle. Not in myth, but in mathematics. Chapter 6, Death, Rediscovery, and Eternal Influence. The fall of Syracuse in 212 BCE was not just the fall of a city. It was the silencing of one of the greatest minds humanity had ever known. Despite direct orders from the Roman general Marcellus, Archimedes was killed, struck down by a soldier who could not recognize the value of what stood before him. He was found, the story goes, in his home, not hiding, not fleeing, but drawing circles in the dust, immersed in thought, consumed by a problem, as if war had not yet reached him. When approached, he is said to have spoken calmly, "Do not disturb my circles." And in the next moment, he was gone. Marcellus, upon learning of the death, is said to have wept. He ordered Archimedes be buried with honor. But honor, it seemed, was not enough to preserve memory. Over time, his tomb was lost. Its exact location vanished into the overgrowth of history. Its inscriptions faded. Even his name risked being forgotten. It was not until the 1st century BCE that the Roman statesman Cicero, then a young official stationed in Sicily, sought to find the tomb of Archimedes. Guided by fragmentary accounts, he found it. Hidden beneath briars and brush, the carving of a sphere inside a cylinder still faintly visible. Even in death, Archimedes had clung to what he loved most: geometry. For centuries afterward, his work was studied, copied, and passed from scholar to scholar. But it was never central. It was never fully understood. In the Middle Ages, Europe forgot him. In the West, his name was mentioned in reverence, but rarely in study. It was the scholars of the Islamic Golden Age who preserved his legacy. They translated his works into Arabic, analyzed his theorems, and built upon his reasoning. In Baghdad and Damascus, Archimedes lived again. Centuries later, during the Renaissance, his writings were rediscovered in Europe. Latin translations spread through universities, sparking a revival in mathematical thought. Figures like Galileo and Descartes were inspired by his insights. Galileo would call him superhuman, and Newton, centuries later, would walk in his footsteps. But perhaps the greatest rediscovery of all came not in libraries, but in a monastery. In 1906, a Danish scholar named Johann Ludwig Heiberg uncovered a 13th century prayer book in Constantinople. Beneath the layers of Byzantine text was something remarkable. The pages had once belonged to Archimedes' lost manuscript, the Method. It had been scraped and overwritten by monks. But under ultraviolet light, his words, his diagrams, were still there. It was as if, across time, he had refused to be erased. Modern science has continued to uncover new layers to his brilliance. His understanding of hydrostatics became the basis for fluid dynamics. His lever principle is now a foundation of classical mechanics. His calculations with limits anticipated the central techniques of calculus. In a world powered by algorithms, rocket science, and artificial intelligence, we still echo Archimedes. His principles are etched in textbooks. His logic drives spacecraft. His geometry animates computer graphics. And his vision, his pure belief in the power of thought, remains one of humanity's greatest beacons. We often remember his Eureka moment, the cry of discovery, the thrill of revelation. But perhaps more important was what he did before that cry. He observed, he noticed, he thought, silently, patiently, endlessly. And in that silence, he changed the world. Archimedes is no longer a man of one city or one time. He belongs to all of us. In every equation we solve, in every problem we approach with reason, we walk a little in his shadow. He was more than a mathematician. He was proof that the mind, sharpened by curiosity and guided by truth, can reach beyond the stars. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the life and legacy of Archimedes. If you found inspiration in his story and believe in the power of human thought, please consider subscribing to our channel. Like, share, and comment below. We'd love to hear which part of Archimedes' genius resonated with you most. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a story that shaped our world. Until next time, keep thinking deeply and stay curious.